Welcome everyone to True Real Estate Horror Stories. My name is Mike McNamara with Willow Manor, and today I have Jeff Zahler here. How are you?
I'm good, Mike. How you doing, bud?
Good. So tell everybody a little bit about yourself, how long you've been in the industry, how much you give back to the industry, because you do a lot of that. So.
Absolutely. So I've been licensed since 2004, so was that 19 years now?
Gotcha.
Yeah, right. We've had our brokerage now for 10 years. We're coming up on 10 years this September, so that's been really cool.
How many agents do you have?
We have about 18 agents now.
Okay.
Kind of fluctuates between 18 and 25, kind of where we want to be, right? I like the idea of being a team feel with being in the brokerage still. So we kind of felt like that's our kind of our sweet spot.
Yep.
And it's been an exciting journey. As you said, kind of wear a lot of hats. I am currently on our board of directors for Las Vegas, for Las Vegas Realtors. I'm on the Nevada board of directors as well.
Awesome.
I'm actually on an NAR committee. I'm on the research committee. And
where do you find time to do real estate?
I don't. That's why I'm on this podcast today, right? And then I am actually a new Tom Ferry business coach too. So,
oh, really? Awesome.
Yeah. So awesome. I like to stay busy. We got 3 kids at home, so life is chaos, but chaos is fun.
Yeah, love it. So, what stories do you have for us today? What would you like to start with?
Well, you didn't give me much, which I like, right? So you said horror stories, and a couple came to my mind. So we. And the good news is all these are well beyond statute of limitations, so that's good. Files are all gone, but I've got a few that came to mind initially. So you want to hear about the dead guy? You want to hear about the one that literally probably almost killed me just from stress? Or the one that's a stripper / lady of the night?
Well, we are Las Vegas, so why don't you start there?
Okay. So this is going back years, right? So we're talking about this happened actually probably even before the brokerage started. So it's been a long time. As we all know, 2008 here locally, we had a little bit of a foreclosure crisis.
Yeah, just a small one. That's right when I came into the industry.
Right. So this is probably a few years after that because we didn't get in here till 2012. So this is early on, 12, 13-ish. We were buying homes at the foreclosure auction, right down on 4th Street. And one of the homes...
If you don't mind me stop you real quick.
No, of course.
So buying homes at the foreclosure auction, you're a realtor. Are you representing yourself? Are you representing a buyer?
So when we first came down here, our background was we had actually been working for an investment fund in California that did about 300 to 400 purchases in just a couple year period.
Gotcha.
It was pretty big, got pretty big pretty quickly. This was really kind of like 2009, 10-ish. So before all the big hedge funds got into that space.
Gotcha.
Right? It was kind of mom and pop investors and everything like that. So fast forward, so I was actually working with an investment fund that was based up in Northern Nevada. We were representing them on the sales here, and as a realtor, it was a way for us to essentially create our own inventory, which was really nice, right? So did a lot of analysis. My wife was really on the she was on the listing side at that time, and I was more on the transaction side, the buying side.
Gotcha. To
kind of separate the two, making sure, like anything else in any investment, if you buy right, the investment is good. So we did a lot of that. There's your, when we literally sat in a parking lot with cashier's checks. That was kind of a weird way to make a living, but it's what we all did back then, right? So
awesome.
So anyway, so we bought the home. It's always interesting when you buy a home and you're the winning bidder because you're basically admitting I'm willing to spend more money than anybody else on this home and I still need to make a profit.
Right.
So what do I know? What do I not know?
Right.
And what did I miss? And that specific home, we were the only bidders. And that always scared me.
Interesting. And I'll be honest, my knowledge in this space is very lacking because I've never gone to auctions, never dealt with any of this. So it's interesting to hear the process.
So we were the only bidders, and that immediately I was like, okay, we are either going to do really well on this one or this is not going to be a good one, right? So that even starts that story, right? So we're the only bidders. I don't remember what we paid for it. This was 10 plus years ago, so definitely not nearly what it would be today.
Sure.
And we knew the home was occupied, And at that time, as everything, we were dealing with squatters.
Okay.
In the valley,
so
right?
most of the homes at the auctions probably, especially during that time, there was a lot. The chances of squatters were a lot higher.
The chances of squatters were a lot higher. I wouldn't say it was like 50%, but it was part of what was happening in our economy.
Sure.
So we knew the home was occupied. We didn't know whether it was owner occupant, if it was a valid lease, or just.
So you don't get that information at an auction.
There is no such thing. Due diligence is all on you, right? There is no property report. You are not doing it. You were doing an eyeball inspection on a home.
So you're driving by the home and just taking a look at it.
Absolutely, right? So doing that and talking about how that skill kind of translates to our business now, I got really, really, really good at comping houses.
I was gonna say you had to.
You have to,
because you're doing it in mass.
You're doing, Malcolm Gladwell talks about becoming a professional or an expert at something when you get to 10,000 hours is kind of his rule. I say the first year we were in this valley doing this, I probably comped 10,000 houses.
Wow.
Right. So you get that education. And I came from, we weren't from here either. Right. So getting here, the best way to learn the market, driving the market, and comping is, we were comping 50 houses a night.
Yeah.
50 houses, because by the next day, 20 would go to auction. And by the time you got to auction, maybe 10 were left. Right. But you still had to do all the work.
Yeah.
So anyway, going back to the numbers, right? You get really good at comping, and you get really good at understanding how much paint's going to cost, how much new flooring's going to cost, and you have to build that into your estimation, not knowing what it is.
Because you're also what is the percent that you're trying to make on top of this?
We were
around 20.
20 would be a home run, man. We were literally living on singles and doubles, and every once in a while you hit a home run, it's great, right? But that was kind of that's that background, right? Gotcha. And everybody ran their fund differently, right? We weren't buying and holding. Hindsight's always 20/20. It would have been a really awesome fun if we just bought a bunch of houses and held on for 10 years.
Right.
But hey, it is what it is. But so anyway, we bought the house, and the first thing we always do is then we try to go make contact with the occupants, right? And that's what we do. And we had a nice little form letter. I don't like confrontation, so it was always one of those things I'd knock on the door hoping nobody would answer, so I'd leave my note. Yeah. Of course, we knock on the door, and a female comes to the door, and it was 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the afternoon, but according to her, it could have been 4 in the morning because she looked disheveled. We'll just use that word.
Yes, that's a good word.
And I got a story of something like, oh yeah, this is my uncle's house. It was like a weird story, right? I'm like, okay, I've heard it before. So I gave my note, and at that time, I'm always like, give the note and get the heck out of there, right? So I gave the note, left, and then like later that day, maybe the next day, she called and said, oh, you kind of caught me off guard. So. As you can tell, I can take a long story and make it longer, so I'll kind of go a little bit faster. But anyway, so we finally get to a point where I'm going to do a property inspection. Because at this point, this is also when people are like, I can get you out, but I need money, right? Like, so it's a cash for keys.
Now, I'm assuming you factor that into your numbers as well, is that you're going to possibly have to pay for the
Exactly, right? Back then, we probably, if we knew a house was occupied, we probably estimated, $5,000, right? Okay. If we could get away with less, great, or whatever. But I always had a number in there to kind of pad. Right? Yep. So I knew that we had to deal with this. We dealt with this a lot. So go back to the house. I think we bought it on a Friday. Go back to the house like Tuesday the next week, and knock on the door. She does open the door. Apologize for like the confusion. I'm like, whatever. Let me get in and out. So I walk in the house, and I knew like alarms in my head were going off. Mm-hmm. She again looked disheveled. Mm-hmm. There was and this is really fun. So for you guys watching, I've got my 9-year-old in the room right now, so I'm gonna try to make this as PG as possible. Sorry, Mackenzie. It's take your kid to work day.
Right.
So I walk into this house, and the first thing I see in the living room is a pole. And we're not talking about a structural pole. Okay, we're not talking about a structural.
This is one that can be removed.
Yeah, this is a pole that can be removed. It was brass, and we're on laying it down.
Yes.
My daughter's laughing. She has no idea what we're doing.
You hope.
You're right. It is Vegas. So I'm like, okay, something's going on. And then as I'm going through each of the bedrooms, there's like other women there. There's young kids there. Okay. There's no furniture. It's air beds and all that stuff. And then there's a whole bunch of guys. This is, again, way before Marijuana was legalized. The house definitely smelled like a skunk.
Yeah.
No judgment, right? But I'm like, okay, there's something going on.
Sure.
So like, get me in, get me out.
Quick as
So we're talking and we're trying to communicate, and the next thing I need is to talk to them. So I get their phone numbers, I get their email addresses. What I noticed again, I was talking to her and one of the gentlemen. Both the emails they gave me, their real names did not match their email addresses.
Gotcha.
Okay. Again, red flag. So like, let's just get this. So I kind of verbally talked about a number. They basically said, if you can give me a little bit more, we can be gone, even sooner. I'm like, well, I'm looking around. I'm like, yeah, of course, that makes sense. So we come to an agreement. I send them the documents to these email addresses. And then, of course, I'm like, okay, curiosity kills a cat. So first thing I do is, I can't remember her name, can't remember the email address, but I remember it's different. So I took the email address and I just threw it into Google. So when you throw an email address of somebody that you think may be, in the service business,
sure,
things are going to come up.
Right.
So threw the email address into Google, and service items came up. There was some Craigslist posts, some other posts, and all that stuff. I'm like, okay, here's what we're dealing with.
Yeah.
Threw the gentleman's email address into the post, and yeah, he was. If she was in the service business, if she was an agent, he was her broker.
Gotcha.
That's how we're going to word it.
Clear. That's perfect.
That's how we're going to word it, right? This is a real estate podcast, so we're dealing with an agent and her broker.
Gotcha.
So this whole thing is going on, and it feels like a lot, but it's just like a 2 or 3 day. I'm like, I need these people out, right? So we get them out. They actually leave the house fairly in decent condition.
That was going to be my question. Do you ever get concerns, or have you ever come across where they destroy the place on their way out?
It's happened. Not necessarily as much with that situation. Okay. It's sometimes it's the vacant ones that you can't see the stuff until you start flushing toilets and all. You've heard horror stories like concrete down. Yeah, exactly. Right.
Absolutely.
And the other thing we used to always do is like, hey, here's what's going to happen. We will bring cashier's checks, but we're not going to release that money to you until you're out and we have the keys, right? Gotcha. To at least avoid that. So we get them out, everything's good. At least we, on the surface is good. What then happened next is the funny part of the story is as soon as they are gone, and this is a house in Nevada Trails, okay? So nice area.
That's where I live.
Yeah, so by the way, we'll talk off camera. Nice, so nice community, nice home. It's a single level home in Nevada Trails. Yeah. Neighbors started approaching me, like immediately, thanking me. Like, you don't know what was going on. We don't fully know what was going on, but we'd see her coming back at all times of the night. And as I'm leaving, after I get them out of the house, of course, what it's one of those things you don't notice. I look down, and there are, thankfully they're still closed, but just condoms everywhere. And I'm like, all right, we need to get out of this. We need to do this. So we got them out. That deal, the house was actually in decent shape, which was good. Like, hey, okay, maybe things are good. It was one of those things, again, going back to the whole, we bought that house probably for a little too much. We had it listed a little too high. This is not 2020 where we could have. It was like, you needed to sell it and you needed to price it well. Yeah. So it's out in the market a little bit. We did have a couple break-ins on that house, and we actually had a time where I had to go back in the middle of the night. We had an alarm on the house on purpose, right? Had to meet the security there, and somebody had clearly broken in, taken all the copper from the freaking AC units. Remember that used to happen a lot,
all the time.
It cost us $3,000 of copper, and it was they maybe had made $30 of cash.
It was crazy.
I will never forget this. Whoever had broken into the house, to add insult to injury, decided to have canes for dinner. The water was not on at the house in the time, and somebody's had a irritated stomach, is how we'll word it.
Gotcha.
And decided that they didn't care whether the water was on or not. So we had a couple of toilets we had to replace later.
Okay.
Kind of thing. Yeah. Yeah, my daughter is staring at me like how do I live at home with you?
This is what you do all day?
Yeah, this is what you do? I just want to go back to school.
Right.
So, wow. Sorry, hon. So we ended up getting it done. We ended up selling for more than we thought we were going to. Obviously, I think on that one, I would say, we said we go for singles and doubles. I think if we eked out a single on that one, we got lucky. We may have broken even, we may not have. But that, that was a horror story, man. That was one of those stories that just everything we opened up, you buy, here you go. We targeted homes in nicer communities. That's what we did.
And because Nevada Trails is a nice
and this was, like I said, and it was a relatively new home. When we got it, it looked okay. When we did our drive-by, it looked okay. We knew it was occupied. And even when they came, other than the funny story, it's like the stuff that happened after, right? The stuff that happened after, because these were, vacant homes with signs on the yards and clearly a history of, they knew who had been living there, what it was attracting and all that stuff. So, part of that gig back in those days was how quickly can we get these houses sold? Because the longer you held a vacant house, especially at that time, the more that kind of stuff happened, right? We had police reports that we had to file on numerous houses, right?
Yeah.
Appliances getting stolen,
and eviction notices. I'm sure you have to go through that whole process as well. Yeah. Is there anything you did after this incident? Is there anything you did differently in the future that would help you with research, or is it really almost a gamble on some of these?
I'd love to say we got better at it, but it really is a gamble, right? Yeah. It was, we're still that process still happens now. Since then, the big nationwide huge hedge funds have come in and kind of changed how it is, and that's why we actually kind of exited that space.
Gotcha.
It just the volume wasn't there, and the margins started to become less and less. When we were running money and we were borrowing money to buy homes, days mattered. Right. And when you were competing against guys that were, huge hedge funds that just their cost of capital was zero, it became like the sign. The signs were on the wall. That's when we kind of
it was almost too hard to compete.
It didn't make any sense. Now, do we see that happening in the future? Potentially.
That was going to be my next question. Do you think foreclosures are coming back? Do you think? I personally don't think we're going to see them at the level that we saw them in 2008, 2009.
And I'm sure you and your business partner get into a little bit of a disagreement on that because he may disagree with you. But I don't see what we're going through now compared to what we went through is a totally different thing, right? And the consumer, and anybody who's watching this who's in real estate probably understands what we're talking about, but that was all based on years and years and years of horrible policy that allowed loans to get crazy.
Sure.
Right? Now we know today we see sometimes we see loan offers with close to 100% financing. Obviously VAs are different, but like even conventional financing, 3% down, blah 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 blah.
Right.
The difference today is the ability to qualify has gotten so much harder. Right.
That is true.
So that's why I think if you look at the market now, we never currently in the last few years. 1%, 2% REO, foreclosure kind of stuff.
Yeah.
We'll see ebbs and flows. It'll be interesting to see what happens. This
I think in the next 6 months we're going to know really.
We will, right? This is the economy, and especially when it comes to housing like that. This is not a speedboat. This is a cruise ship, right? So it takes time to see what's happening. But I've been paying attention, especially with that past. Notice defaults haven't gone up. They're really. I mean, every once in a while you'll see something, or if they do, it's the headlines. Notice of default are up 75%. Cool. So they've gone from 3 to 4, or it's the number.
That's how they structure the.
Anybody who knows anything, you can make numbers look however you want to make them. You can make them look really, really good or really scary. It's just how you want to word it. So I don't see a crisis like that, but. I will say this, right? In our business, you have to be able to pivot. We've all kind of learned that word again and again and again in the last couple of years. But if we did get into that type of market again, we've got that knowledge base, right? We've got that knowledge base.
Just a shift.
That's how it is. So,
all right. So you had one other one.
Yeah.
Or possibly two.
Let's go. Let's go. You want to go? We can go dead guy.
Yeah.
Let's go. Dead guy. So again, we bought a house at auction, and again, really nice community. Mm-hmm. Did the knocking on the door thing, left a note, and no response. No response. And sometimes that's not fun, right? You're like, okay, here we go, because you never want to have to get the attorneys involved.
What is it? I was going to say, is the process, if you're not getting any response from supposedly somebody living there, the process has to be the eviction.
Yep.
You have to serve them, and you have to start that eviction process.
You have to start that eviction process.
It can take up to 60 days. Is that 30 or 60 days?
That's what they always say. It was usually longer, right? Yeah. And if somebody knows how to play the game and delay this or do this or then wait till X day and then file Y motion, there's ways, right? But this one kind of caught me. So this was a guard gated community. right? So this one, getting in and
So
out.
you were buying them in nice
Yeah,
communities.
this one getting in and out wasn't just as easy as me popping in and out, right? Because we had a deed, but you're showing a deed to a guard. What are they going
He's
to
got to confirm it.
But so probably 4 or 5 days after we had served that, not the eviction notice, but for 4 or 5 days after we had posted that notice, I got a phone call. It was actually funny. I got a phone call actually from our attorney's office up in Incline, right? Because they were the ones that was, they put together the legal entity and all that stuff. And it was basically, there's water coming out from the garage door, like the roll-up garage door onto the street. Like, that can't be good.
Yeah.
Like, that can't be good. So I run up,
and the longer that goes, the more damage you're
right.
going to have to deal
So we
with.
call, immediately, like, I call the water company to see if they can come shut it off, blah, 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 right? So get up there, and I'm expecting, like, a flood, right? I'm expecting, like, a tsunami. And thankfully, it wasn't a tsunami, but there was definitely water coming from under the bottom of the garage door. You know how there's usually, like, the seams in the concrete? So it was the channel, it was just coming down. Water company was there. They agreed that it was a safety hazard, so they were able to at least turn the water off.
Gotcha.
Cool, at least that part has been done.
Right.
Still nothing, still no notice, still nothing.
Can't get
still
the property.
No access. We have no access to the property, right?
Now, are you legally allowed, since you own it, are you legally allowed to break into the property?
That becomes that really cool. It's like you ask 10 people, you're going to get 10 different responses. And we always played the game of let's be more on the conservative side, especially because what you don't want to do is again, we're going after singles and doubles, right? And have one potential lawsuit over unlawful entry or whatever, right? So we try to play it the right way. Plus, it's always that golden rule. Like, I'm not a very aggressive person. Let's go the way we need to go.
Yeah.
So we got the attorneys involved. Long story short, it took forever because there was court dates that were missed, blah, 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 blah. And this entire time, I am not back in the community again because there's no call for it, and it was just hard. And I remember at one time talking to a neighbor, and the neighbor was like, yeah, guy was kind of just really quiet, kept to himself. Apparently he was, he would be seen walking around the community in a muumuu, because that's what fit him. And of course, I think, growing up, when we grow up, first thing I think about, and my daughter's about to laugh, is the episode of The Simpsons when Homer's wearing a muumuu, right? So that's what I'm thinking, right?
Yeah,
but hey, no judgment, right? So I remember having this conversation with our attorney, like at the beginning of the eviction process, like, man, this would be really weird if the guy, like, maybe not was in the home, but maybe the guy had passed away, because that happens, right?
Yeah.
That happens. So, again, faster. This is now like 3 months in, right? 3 months in, I get a call from our attorney one day. He's like, "All right, we finally got the judge to give us the okay to have the locksmith go in, right? Because that's it. We needed, because once it goes through the process, you have to go through the process, right? You don't want to like go through the process and say, oh, we went vigilante, we knocked the door down, right?
You started it, you got to finish it.
And so we knew the locksmith was coming out, and I got a phone call from the attorney, and it's one of those things I knew answering, like, this is not going to be a good call. This is not going to be a good call. He's like, so, locksmith came. He's like, you remember your fear? I'm like, yep. He's like, yep.
Just came to fruition.
I'm like, oh, please tell me he wasn't there. I'm like, no, he wasn't there, but he had been in the home.
Oh, so he wasn't dead in the property?
He had been dead in the property, but he was no longer there. The coroner had actually removed the body several months before.
Interesting.
Shows you how big our government can be.
Right.
You had the sheriff's office and the county coroner had different information, but there's no central, so we don't know. So we were literally trying to evict the dead guy.
So he did die in the home.
Yeah, he did. So we ended up finding out the story, and the gentleman was a hoarder. Mm-hmm. I mean, to the point where there were, and I say this kind of secondhand. Once I found that out, I waited until that house was completely emptied, until it was completely fixed up, repainted before I stepped foot in it. Right? I was not about that.
What was the water leaking?
So what had happened is the gentleman had gotten up, went to the sink, fell, hit his head, apparently, this is what we think, hit his head on the sink, passed passed away, and it was the water overflowing
So
from.
wouldn't you think that the coroner's office, when they come and take the body, they would shut off water?
Well, so yes. So timeline. When the water was going off, it was probably only right after that happened.
Oh,
So the coroner had come
I see.
later.
I see.
Right.
Okay.
So yeah, I mean, this is a weird. Like I said, I don't know the
Yeah.
time. And this was like one of the first. Like, this is a long time ago.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh man, like this is like real life, real scary. But yeah, we tried to evict a dead guy.
Interesting.
And it was just really bad juju.
Do you disclose this to the buyers?
So,
Because I know the agents are different here in this space.
So in Nevada, it is not a required disclosure.
As long as the house didn't kill them.
Correct. Right. So we made sure everything was done to the full, especially with that, right?
Yep.
But yeah, I mean, so that was, it was not an act of the home. It was a slip and fall, for lack of a better term, right?
Yep.
And we had to do some, I wouldn't say remodeling. We definitely had to do some updating of the house, which was normal at the time. We had to clean out the stuff. The crazy thing about that, and again, hearing the story after the fact, we had. The gentleman had a car in the garage. At some point, a next of kin actually came through the house, never notified us, took the valuable stuff, including the car, and left.
That's crazy.
Like I'm assuming at that point, obviously, if they were notified that. The coroner probably made that notification.
Absolutely.
But of course, when I hear this, I'm like, is a son like stepping over a body? Like, I don't know, right? I'm like, thankfully, like my mind is not too much of a conspiracy theory. It's like, no, proper channels, blah, how would he have been notified?
Yeah.
But, so that one, we didn't sell. From the day we bought it at auction till the actual day we actually sold it was well over a year. Right? And cost of holding that, paying interest on it was rough.
Taxes
and all that stuff. So that one sucked. But that was one of those periods of time where the market did very well in that year. So we ended up selling it. I mean, our costs on it were dramatically more than I thought they were going to be, but our profit was not overly affected because the sales price we were able to sell it for was considerably more. Yeah. So that one was like the first one with the agented broker, if you will, was eerie, but it was Vegas. Like this one definitely was one of those like. This is real life, and we've heard. I had a buddy in that business that buying homes that literally was able to get into a home, thought it was vacant, and there was a decaying corpse in bed.
Well, we had somebody on here that gave that exact same story.
Yeah.
I've had a story where I've had a client while we were listed, so I took the listing, everything, and he committed suicide in the living room, and an agent is the one who told me about it when she went to go view the property. So I've gone through a few of this, and really the more production you do, the more these stories just start popping up, and they're random, and
you see it all, right? Like this job, this career, whatever you want to call it, day by day, right? This headache,
right?
We get it all, and
it's why I love it. To be honest, I mean,
it keeps you on your toes.
Keeps you on your toes. You're always having to keep educating yourself, keep learning, and improving your business. All right, so the last question that I always ask everybody: if there is a book that you're going to recommend to a new agent or an agent in general, what would that be and why?
Oh man, that's such a good question. So, I think maybe I don't know. I think I'm going to probably give you an answer that you haven't heard.
Okay.
Because most people are going to probably say Millionaire Agent, all that stuff, right? And those are great books.
Yeah.
That's really tactical with our industry. Rich Dad, Poor Dad, that kind of stuff. It's called Growth Mindset.
Growth Mindset.
Okay. By Carolyn Dweck, I think is her name, Dr. Carolyn Dweck, and it's has nothing to do with real estate, but it's all mindset.
Gotcha.
And it's do you have a fixed mindset or do you have a growth mindset? And I think in our business, so many people get into this and say, this is how it is, it can't get better, blah, 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 blah. Like we are in a very lonely industry.
Yes.
Right? We are in a very, very lonely industry. And, especially as a new agent, when you get in and you surround yourself with agents that have that, like, oh, I've been in this business, it's a grind, blah, 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 blah. Like, that's a fixed mindset. You're getting stuck in it. Yeah. So that book again, has nothing to do with real estate, but it's all about how you look at things, how you perceive things. That book has helped me with real estate dramatically, but it's definitely made me a better human, right? Like, and it's like, cool, it doesn't have to be this way or this way. We all know what's the saying? You are like the 5 people you hang out with most, right? And I'm a firm believer in that kind of thing, like aim big kind of thing. But it's the same thing. Like, put yourself in, surround yourself with people that think bigger too, right? Don't have that whole. We all know this is how it's been. This is how it's always going to be, and that's a crock, right? That's a crock.
Yeah, I did a video on change and how I feel that it's one of the most important things is that you're able to accept change. And it's something that when I'm talking to agents that are on our team, I'm like, listen, I built these systems out just because of my own experiences. That doesn't mean they can't be better. And just because you're 3 years into the industry, that I want you to speak up and tell me, hey, I noticed this about that, but I think this would be better. And I might listen, I might not listen, but I don't want you to feel that you can't talk to me about that.
I love that because I still remember the first time you and I met officially, right? And it was you and Zach came into the office, and it was Zach's gonna go do this, and I from minute one I'm like, Mike's the systems guy, right? And then you knew, like, it wasn't like I was discovering things, like you're like, I'm the systems guy. But I'm the very same way, and it's like for me, especially with all the SOPs and all that stuff I'm setting up, I know I'm not perfect. I try to pretend I am.
Sure.
I am in my daughter's eyes. But whenever something happens in our business that something doesn't work, which is, I don't know what, daily, my question to whether it's one of my agents or one of our staff, is this just a mistake or is there a break in the system? Because mistakes happen. We're good with mistakes. If you have determined that there's something that's wrong with the system, I want to know right away so we can look at it and make that change.
Absolutely.
And that's what you need to do, right?
Absolutely. Everything that I look at, it's always that little detail, and I'm like, okay, how do we make this better? And then a year from now, how do we make that better again, and just keep improving?
Life's about an infinite amount of forks in the road, right? So cool, let's back to this fork. Okay, we went this way. What happens if we go this way, right? And that's what this business is, and that's what being a new agent is.
Absolutely.
Go out and make mistakes, right? Go make mistakes. Don't get your broker sued. Right? But go out and make mistakes. Learn from them. There's no such thing as a mistake in this business as long as you're not being careless. And surround yourself with those people that are willing to say, I'm proud of you for doing this. Have you considered doing this way?
And if you watch this podcast, you'll realize most of the agents I have on here are pretty big agents, and they all like to share and they all like to educate. And so I was very fortunate when I got into the industry to just get pulled by some big Jody Raphael, Cameron Kilday, some bigger agents that kind of took me under their wing. But you'd be surprised at how many agents that are pretty big agents that if you were to approach them and ask them questions, they're ready to just teach. They like it.
The reason I did the coaching thing too is I want to give back, right? And I know I'm not the best agent. I know I'm pretty damn good, but I'm always trying to get better. But for me, it doesn't give me excitement closing those deals anymore like it used to. It's watching my agents go from their first deal to I'm doing 15 a year.
13 to 20.
One of my agents right now is when we sat and talked about her goals for the year, she's like, I want to make 100K. I'm like, cool, good. 100K is kind of that magic number.
Right.
We're late April right now. She's like, I'm on pace for 200K and I don't want to stop.
That's awesome.
That to me is that drives me more than closing a $5 million deal. Because I get to watch that and like I said, doing the whole coaching thing. I still love to coach my agents, and that's, obviously I profit from that.
Sure.
But being able to help agents from across the country, knowing that when I started getting coached 6 years ago, I was in that same boat, what do I need to do, where I need to go? And it's just really cool to watch people go, oh, you mean if I do this, this happens? But actually the buy-in is the important part. The buy-in is the important part.
Well, thank you, man. I really appreciate you coming on, and we'll have to do this again.
Yeah, it's fun.
You're always back. Welcome back on.
Sounds good. I'm sure I have more stories.
Thank you, brother.
All right,
appreciate it.